Welcome to the Tank Podcast. In this week's episode, Vincenzo Latronico reads from his novel Perfection, the story of two people defined almost entirely through where they live and what they consume.
They had their rituals, their common references. Bloody Marys with potato latkes on Saturday mornings on Weinbergsweg, burgers under the U-Bahn overpass on Straße, and that other joint in the middle of nowhere, run by and for Americans, which served a burger so big it was free to whoever could finish it. They would sing ironic renditions of Oasis at karaoke beneath the wall. They would watch the sun go down from the little fortress in Victoria Park or from the Wasserturm. In the evenings, they would gravitate towards the same cluster of streets, the pedestrian bridges over the Landwehr Canal around Maybachufer, the leafy avenues in Schiller-Kiez, the first few blocks of Weserstraße. They would crack the same jokes about Winterdepression and the fact that they had never been to West Berlin, even though they all lived between Rixdorf and Neukölln. To newcomers, almost like an initiation rite, they would pass down the rumor that the swans under Admiralbrücke were the souls of some Spanish Erasmus students who drowned in the canal during their first winter, fooled by the ice on its surface. They would spend long weekends together that would start on Saturday morning and run into the following afternoon. Their group would expand and contract like a living, breathing thing. The morning crew would start small, with more and more people trickling in to play table tennis in Arkonaplatz or bocce on Paul-Linke-Ufer. They would play absent-mindedly, sometimes competing in teams, but usually all together, loosely orbiting the table and taking turns to have a go. The losers would wander off among the market stalls to browse acetate tracksuit bottoms, jars of homemade granola, and funny-shaped cacti. Once the group had reconvened, they would go and get eggs and salmon, or asparagus when in season, in some cafe, where they might stay for 30 minutes or several hours, leafing through magazines they had already read online, and commenting, with barely disguised sarcasm, with suppressed rage, with nostalgia or disappointment, on the latest news from Portugal or France. The late afternoon would be spent going from gallery to gallery. They were all signed up to the same newsletter, listing the latest art events, which included icons to denote whether there would be free drinks, or if the crowd would be mostly German or English-speaking. Having exhausted the openings on offer that day, some of their friends would slope off home, but they knew they would pick up others along the way, people who had spent the morning at a Turkish market maybe, or gone for food in one of the Thai street food stands at Preußenpark. You could tell a gallery from all the way up the street by the little huddles of people around the neon glow, by the empties piled up around plastic beer crates on the pavement. They would spend a few minutes wandering through the gallery space and commenting on the works in whispered Greek or English, which were interesting, which were derivative. Then they would plan their next stop. An independent art space above a car wash in Friedrichshain, a former furniture stop on Torstraße, the basement gallery on Gräferstraße, whose parties were so notoriously packed with new arrivals that it was nicknamed the Italian Embassy. They would plan their route and set off, leaving any stragglers behind, confident they would catch up again, somewhere along the way. Those pilgrimages could last until well into the evening and included refreshment breaks to refuel with takeaway sushi or falafel. But at each new stop, the sizable group amassed over the afternoon would grow slimmer and more streamlined for the night ahead. By now, there would rarely be anyone from the morning left. But like the Argonauts ship, something of the original group would remain, a particular style of dress, or an in-joke repeated so often it would become a sort of secret handshake. Those still standing would assess their finances and energy levels, try to convince their friends to join over text, and make a final decision over whether to hold themselves up at one of their houses for a game of Carcassonne, or to venture on to Renate, to Homopathic, to Sisyphos. When they got there, the group would disband in order to get past the bouncers, and then reconvene under the loudspeakers or in the bathroom queue. They would move in and out of each other's radar through the early hours, somehow always finding each other in the morning, with the exception of those who had called it a night or hooked up. Emerging into the light, which hit them like needles in their eyes, they would look for a peaceful place to let the energy wash away, cracking more jokes with hoarse voices on the U-Bahn. Sometimes they would make it all the way to Mauerpark to recover with a greasy breakfast from one of the fast food stands. Other times, weather permitting, they would lie down to doze and drink cold brewed yerba mate on Tempelhof's grassy expanse. They would still be drunk and high, vibratile, the bass booming on in their ears. They would imagine how they must look to the outside world, with their aching cheekbones drawn into fixed grins, their clothes smeared with cigarette ash and sweat, and still carrying the odd trace of dimly remembered adventures, a marker pen scribble on their face, a garland of fake frangipani in their pocket, a bunch of helium balloons tied to their jacket buttons and now trailing, half deflated, like comet tails. They would feel decadent and enviable, alive.
To hear more podcasts from Tank, you can subscribe on all major podcast platforms or follow us on SoundCloud. The theme music for this podcast is by Himera.